Hey, SKMB family, Luke Elamaki here with the Church Multiplication Team Minute. Hope you had a great summer, and I'm sure you're getting right back into things as fall kicks off. I'm excited for the fall for a number of reasons, but one of the things I'm really excited about is our Gospel Fluency Workshop happening September 28th. We are having Ben Connolly come out from the great nation of Texas to join us and instruct us in Gospel Fluency. So, we want you to come. This is not just an event for pastors, but it's an event for the whole entire church. This will benefit anyone who calls your church home and loves Jesus. So we want you to come out. And what I realize is that a lot of you probably have never heard of Ben Connolly or never read any of his books. And so we did a quick Skype interview today just to introduce you guys to Ben Connolly. So with this video, what's going to play after this is my interview with Ben. Take a listen. It's about 20 minutes long, so it's a little bit longer, but you can really get to know who Ben is and his heart behind gospel fluency. So take a listen to this video. And like I said, we'd love to see you come out September 28th. You can sign up for this event at our website. But we'd love for you to come, bring your team, bring people from your church, and come grow in our gospel fluency together. So here's the interview with me and Ben, and hopefully you can get to know Ben a bit better through this. Ben Connolly. Oh, you there? There we are.
I'm here. I'm good. Yeah, I wonder if I had to jump off while you start recording.
Awesome. So we're here with Ben, and we're talking about the gospel. What are we calling this? The Gospel Fluency Workshop. Yeah, it might be good to know. Gospel Fluency Workshop that's coming up September 28th in Saskatoon, and we're excited to have Ben come out. Ben, I don't know if you've heard about Ben before. He's an author. I actually read one of your books I have at my office, the one that you wrote with Bob Roberts.
Yeah, Bob's a good friend.
Yeah, it was a good book. We used it for our core team when we were launching our church plant. We worked through it, but Ben's also worked with a workbook with Jeff Benderselt called Gospel Fluency. So Ben, how about you share a little bit about yourself, who you are, your family, where you live?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Ben Conley. I live just outside of Saskatoon in Fort Worth, Texas. So the weather is very similar down here today as it's up there. No, but I have a wife named Jessica. She's from Omaha, Nebraska. We met during university years, and I convinced her to move to Texas. And we have three kiddos, third grade, first grade, and pre-K. We planted a church called the City Church in downtown Fort Worth about 10 years ago. And actually, the week that we're talking, Luke, it turns 10 years old this week. So some celebration that God has sustained us through ups and downs, as every church has. And I've gotten to serve with church planters and disciple makers through Soma and Saturate for the last few years as well. So that's a little bit.
Yeah. So Fort Worth, Texas, that's part of Dallas, right? For us Canadians.
It is for you Canadians, I'll allow it, but yeah, Dallas and Fort Worth do not like each other, so we are not part of one another. Just kidding. It is there's a little fake rivalry, chips on our shoulders against one another, but yeah, we're close to Dallas.
Close together. So you might be a Dallas Cowboys fan then?
You know, if I like pro football, then sure. I love college ball. I got to come back this week as we're talking, but I love college sports more than pro. So, although one of the few random facts I know about Saskatchewan is that your provincial sport is curling, which I find absolutely enthralling, and hope that that's a part of our Saturday together.
Curling, amazing. The fact that you know what curling is just impressive. Have you ever been to Saskatchewan before?
I haven't. No, Saskatchewan is Saskatoon is one of the three kind of more major cities in Canada that I haven't been to. So I'm honored and excited to be up there.
Yeah. Outside of curling, do anything else about Saskatchewan? Any other tidbits you heard? Or?
I mean, only kind of from kind of looking online. So I know it's further north than where I live. I know that it is. Seems to have kind of a pride in its kind of arts and culture, and a lot of course, this is true of a lot of Canada, but especially there, a lot of natural beauty and trails and that kind of stuff. And so,
it definitely has its own beauty.
Yeah, it looks like that, bridges and rivers, and yeah. So I know from afar, kind of stats a little bit, and look forward to getting to know more firsthand basis.
Definitely. Yeah, you told us a little bit about your story when you introduced yourself that you planted a church 10 years ago. That's amazing. 10 years is great. Tell us a little bit more about your story. Tell us about what the church is like that you pastor in Texas, the highs and lows that you've gone through in the past 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, so Texas is a strange mission field in that there's a lot of folks who think that they're believers, that they're disciples of Jesus, largely because of a certain number of actions they carry out. So I'm actually a prototype of this. I worked for a church and was a youth minister for 2 years before I think I knew Jesus personally, and that's not something I'm proud of. But it is a really good reminder of a lot of the folks who live around us who are on mission too. And so a lot of the work in Fort Worth and Texas and religious cultures is having to deconstruct what you think is true and the core of what you think you hold to, and then reconstruct an actual true and vibrant faith. And so that's a lot of what we've been working on for the last 10 years, and getting to see folks who go from being just burdened to do things to earn salvation, or who think that their salvation is because of certain actions they take or that kind of stuff, to really being freed by grace through faith and that kind of thing. And so that's how I became a believer when I was in my university years, and that's a lot of the folks that we're living on mission with. And Fort Worth has tons of churches, and so we shaped our church around some of the. You mentioned reading the book Luke, and so a lot of what we shaped our church around is kind of neighborhood-based communities to go out into the darkness, to reach the folks who would never walk into any of the literally hundreds of churches that's in Fort Worth, Texas. And yet our city, for being very religious, would still claim to be 70% unchurched.
Wow, that's
And so we
amazing.
built a church that was, yeah, it really it blew all the assumptions away.
Yeah,
Uh, but it meant, if we're going to start a church, we don't need to just find another Sunday gathering. There's plenty of those, and frankly, they have bigger budgets, and we're not going to outdo them, quote unquote, as if that's what churches should be about in the first place, right?
yeah,
But instead, we try to shape a church that was more about going out into the neighborhoods, and into the darkness. And so we do that through what we call missional communities. We'll not talk a ton about missional communities during the training, because gospel fluency goes beyond any church model or that kind of stuff. But that's a little bit of what we've been doing as we try to live on mission to this unique and strange religious culture in Texas.
yeah. What's been the biggest shocker to you in your 10 plus years of ministry there?
Oh man, 16 things just popped into my head. The biggest shocker, I that's a good question. You just stumped me. I think the biggest shocker would be how incredibly broken every single human is, but how even in a lot of Christian circles, we're taught that we have to put on this very pretty face.
Hmm.
Um, and so this I don't know if this is true in Saskatchewan, but there's just a lot of kind of pretty facades that have to go up, that make it really difficult to kind of carry out a lot of the biblical commands of knowing one another well, and exhorting one another, encouraging one another, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's true here. I think that's probably true everywhere where there's affluency and this kind of image that we portray,
Yeah,
and it's tough to work past that. And even for myself as a pastor, that's something I struggle with. It's a daily reminder to be real and share
hmm
the truth of the gospel myself. That it's not my image that makes me right with God, but it's Jesus.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're a guy who's passionate about living out the church's mission. I've come across that in reading the book you wrote and other things I've heard you speak at. Where did that passion? What shaped that passion? What are some of the tools or resources that shaped that passion in your life outside the Bible, of course?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, the Bible and the Spirit obviously are driving forces. My own story, I think, shaped some of that, of realizing, this the realization when I was age 20 is just this. It sounds so obvious now, but this shocking reality that if Jesus is real, he should matter to all of life.
Yeah,
And so this kind of double life I was living as a college sophomore at the time, teaching middle school and high school students, secondary school students, not to do things that I was then going and doing as a second year college student. And there's this shock of like, if Jesus is real, he should matter. And so certainly that gave me a heart to see other people through that lens of I look like a good kid on the outside. I was, raised in the church, quote unquote, but none of that mattered. So that was part of it. And then being raised in the church, we were kind of bounced back and forth between two different veins of the church, and one was very much about justice and doing good and being about the neighbors. But there's very little, like there was zero Bible that I remember being taught, very little theology kind of stuff. And then the other vein that for whatever reason my kind of family bounced back and forth was it was very, very high theology, high Bible, but not even really a focus on other Christians, much less the community around us. And so there's very much this me and God, and the more I know about God, the more holy I am. And so those two passions, to use your word, kind of merge when we planted the church and kind of going, is there a way to bring in like good biblical theology and also a love for neighbors and a seeking of the welfare and pursuing justice and this kind of stuff? And just reading back through the scriptures, you can't avoid seeing that. It's laced throughout that both the glory of God and the good of the people around you are so intertwined.
Yeah. Have
I,
you
it's
found?
the
Oh,
first
go
command.
ahead.
Love is the first commandment. Love God and love neighbors. And one church tradition I was raised in did half of that really well, and the other did the other half really well. So
Have you
yeah,
found it challenging to see as you plan your church and have that big part of your DNA? Was that challenging for people to grasp? Was there naturally people who like seem to go like I know we talk about the social gospel, and then there's like the theology nerds, like the fundamentalists. It seems like sometimes, did you find that people found like one ditch to fall into, or was it pretty people eager to jump in and say, yeah, we want to combine these two?
yeah. I think that's a good question. I think it was some of both. So certainly, I think that this is a generalization, but many of us, and I think if anyone who's watching this could kind of go like, which bent am I more geared toward?
Yeah.
Most of us have the tendency to fall into one of the ditches or the other. To very personal faith, very kind of me and God, holiness and knowledge, or very outward facing and wanting to do good and love people. Um, but I think we saw this population of folks who realized the downside to one without the other. And so what they saw in our little church plant, and again, we're talking about people, we're talking about like 20 people on the first day, not the masses in Fort Worth, but we saw people go like, I've yearned for something a little bit more. Whether it's I've yearned for a church that would help me put my faith into action, or I've yearned for a church that would help give some foundation to my faith,
Yeah.
to my action. Um, and so what we tried to find was this balance of both that did seem appealing to believers, and then to non-believers, we had folks going like, "Hey, it's Sunday morning. Why are you out here, building this playground for an underprivileged school?" Well, we're a church. Well, you're a church. Even more so, why are you out here on a Sunday morning? Then you're supposed to be singing songs to this God we don't believe in, says the non-believer. And we kind of go, well, we believe that this is an aspect of worship. It's not the only aspect of worship, but serving our cities and seeking the welfare of those on the fringes is part of worship. And
Yeah.
we more than once, someone who doesn't believe in Jesus say something like, "Man, if this is what Christianity is about, I might give God another chance."
Wow.
So again, that's any moment like this. I'm sharing, a couple of the best stories. So we had plenty of other folks, spit on us and walk away as well. But um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So obviously, as a pastor, you've had probably lots of conversations with followers of Jesus who struggle to live a mission. They have a desire, they have that like, yes, like I read this in the Bible, I hear this in messages. I want to live out my faith with my neighbors and people at work. It was a struggle for me to do this. If you were to sit down with over coffee with them, what would be some of your encouragements to them?
yeah, um, yeah. I think that the biggest encouragement would be that there is a lot of pressure that Christians feel to get it right,
Mhm.
um, and that there is so much grace for the times, not if, but when we botch it. And so, will we at some level misrepresent God? Yeah, sure, every day. Will we not know the answer to a question that someone's asking? Sure, absolutely. And I think it's that pressure that a lot of times makes us hesitant to engage with folks who don't believe, because we feel like if we misrepresent God, somehow we've let him down. Um, and so I think the encouragement would be like it's really there's a freedom that comes if we really believe what we believe about the gospel and that God alone is the one who saves and that all of us are imperfect people, then there's a freedom in just like translating some of what we say we believe into even the mission we're trying to live on, because it frees us from feeling like it has to be all about us.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think the other encouragement, this is real brief, is like God calls all of us to make disciples, but I don't think He gives us a quota.
Yeah.
Uh, and so being able to walk with someone or see, one or two people over the course of someone's life come into the kingdom, like sure, there are folks who are evangelists and they walk into a room and it seems like the whole room falls down on their knees and declares their need. God has gifted some of those people. I'm not one of those people, and I don't know very many of those people. And for the rest of us, kind of going, man, if God uses you to impact the lives of one, two, five people over the course of your life, like there's angels in heavens rejoicing over single souls that are saved. Um, and so if we can get out of the mindset of like it's got to be one a year or one a month or there's this quota that I have to meet or God is displeased with me, then I think there's this freedom to walk alongside people and then rejoice when God chooses the moment when He saves them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so freeing to hear that. That pressure you talk about. I think I started a conversation last week with a lady, and that was what she was talking about. She just has this fear of rejection and this feeling that she has to nail it, and that was her biggest obstacle to sharing her faith.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel the pressure.
Yeah.
Anytime you feel the pressure too,
Oh,
Luke, right?
yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited that you're coming out here to Saskatchewan. You're making the long trek from the Fort Worth area. You're doing a workshop on gospel fluency, and a few of us in the SKMB family have read the book Gospel Fluency by Jeff Vanderstelt, and so we're familiar with this idea of gospel fluency. How would you describe this term gospel fluency, though, to those who haven't heard of it before or maybe haven't read Jeff's book?
Yeah, sure. So fluency, if we think about it in another context, is just learning to kind of think naturally in a different language, right? And so the problem is it's really hard, for me to learn Spanish, or for folks up your way or a little east of you at least, like if they're English speakers and have French speaking neighbors and this kind of stuff, and in Montreal and Quebec, and learning how to navigate a different language is not always that easy.
Yeah.
Um, and we kind of have the starting point of going, no one naturally thinks through the lens of the gospel. No one naturally thinks the language of the gospel. But fluency is the question of what would it look like if our natural responses or our natural interactions with one another just flowed with the language of Jesus and the gospel and His promises and His truth, both as they apply to myself and then as they apply to other Christians, and then again within the freedom we talked about of living on mission. What would it look like if instead of evangelism having to be this very structured and if you blow it, you blow it kind of thing, what would it look like if it was just so natural for us to speak the gospel as if we speak English or French or Spanish or this kind of stuff? And so evangelism was just kind of part of everyday conversations because the truths of God are so commonly on our lips.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of fluency. And then, as with any language, we also recognize the reality of it. Like it's really hard, if not impossible, to become that level of fluent, especially in the things of the Spirit, the things of the gospel. And so what we'll do is spend some of the day kind of giving some exercises. It's think of it like a foreign language class. Here's some basics, and let's build on some basics and give some kind of I hate the word tools. It's not a 5-step process to gospel fluency or your money back or anything like that, but just hopefully helping us reframe and rethink, and then giving some kind of ongoing practice, just like learning another language, so that we can all become a little bit more adept at thinking through the lens of how does the gospel apply to this in my life? How does it apply to that in my friend's life? How does this apply to my wife or my kids or my unbelieving neighbor's life?
That's awesome. So it's not just an evangelism tool; it's a Christian tool.
Yeah.
It's something that we need not just to share our faith, but to live out our faith in every sphere of life.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I had a friend tell me as part of our church this week, like uh, for he got cut off as he was driving, and so his natural language was not one of the gospel. We'll say that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yours probably would be Luke. Mine, iffy at best. But his, he goes, my natural language is not one of the gospel. He goes, but for the first time, that happens periodically to all of us. For the first time, he goes, but actually, my first response was not gospel, and then I stopped myself for the first time and go, what made me say that?
Huh.
And for him, that was a win of kind of going, what is it that made me feel so self-righteous that my response to being cut off was XYZ kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he realized he was just essentially very prideful and justifying the fact that he was the one speeding, right? Because he, of course, had to get where he was going, but it's the other guy's fault who cut him off. And so it's this kind of moment of applying the gospel to his life and being like, why am I that important that I had to be there at this specific time? So anyway,
Yeah.
and then speaking the truth of like, in Jesus's eyes, I'm no more or less important. In the Father's eyes, I'm more or less important if I'm there at 12 o'clock or 12:01. I've already been approved of by the Father through the blood of Jesus.
Yeah.
Silly
Well,
example, but real life
that's
example.
good. Yeah. So this isn't just a class for pastors then, or church leaders.
No, not just a class for pastors. This is something we teach our church a ton. I mean, all of us say we'll start with this on that Saturday. All of us say we believe the gospel, but what we're going to try to just lay the foundation with is going. I think many Christians believe at best about 2/3 of what the gospel fully is, and so this is for all of us. It deals with our faith. It deals with our interactions with our Father. It deals with our interactions with our family, with our church community, as well as, yes, gives us kind of a lens to see an unbelieving world around us through.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait for you to come out. I'm sure we could talk a lot longer about all the details of this, but that's why we're having you come out so you can share that. So the 28th, you're going to be doing a gospel fluency workshop at
Yep.
Horizon Bible School. And then the 29th, you're going to be at West Portal Church, I believe. You're going to be preaching that morning and
That's
then
right.
doing a missional community workshop that rest of that day. So,
Yep.
um, and that's open to the public. Obviously, anyone can go listen to you preach. But then that workshop, you can sign up for that too. And we'd love for you to join us at the Gospel Fluency Workshop. And we can't wait to have Ben out here in Saskatchewan. So thanks, Ben, for your time. And we're
Thank
looking forward to having you.
I appreciate it, Luke. We'll see you there.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching that interview. Ben's a great guy, and I so enjoy getting to know him a bit through that process. I'd love for you to join us again September 28th at the Gospel Fluency Workshop. You can go to our website to sign up, and we'd love to see you there. Hope you have a great fall. Praying for you as you launch off this new ministry season, praying that God does much more than we could ever dare dream, hope, or even imagine in this next season through His church here in the province of Saskatchewan.